Check Complete, a referee podcast, is an educational resource for referees by referees, designed to connect and develop soccer officials of all ages and skill levels to better serve the game both on and off the field.
I'm super excited to sit down virtually with Dr. Joe Machnik. Dr. Joe, I am thrilled and really appreciate you taking time to chat with the Check Complete podcast today. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're most welcome. This is exciting for me as well. Obviously, I always like to talk about soccer officiating, so it's another opportunity. Thank you for having me with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we certainly love talking about this topic as well. That's for sure. So let's dive right into it. You've got quite the extensive history and experience around the game. So talk to us a little bit about your story, about who you are, and how you've gotten to where you are today.
It's a long story. I don't know. I mean, I grew up in New York City, and there was always a lot of ethnic soccer. And so I watched games in the local park, and I was also a hockey fan back in the day when you could go to a New York Ranger game for 40 cents and a high school ID card. And it was very interesting how hockey refereeing with one referee and two linesmen and soccer refereeing were kind of similar. And so I became a fan of, both. And back in the early days of hockey, when there were only 6 teams, there were only 3 referees. And the linesmen were local to their respective clubs. So you got to know them, you got to know their styles, and I became interested in that kind of stuff. And when I went to Long Island University on a half scholarship for playing soccer, I was a physical education major, and as such, you get taught how to teach the various sports, even at a most elementary level, but also how to officiate them. So I was able to officiate intramural basketball, volleyball, flag football, intramural soccer, all those things. But obviously, as a soccer aficionado, soccer officiating, was the one I was best at. So when I took the hockey officiating exam, I got 100 on the written part, but couldn't skate that well. And the guy told me not to buy any whistles or suitcases. So that was short-lived. But I started officiating youth soccer in the New York City area while playing. And then when my playing career was over, and then I was now living in Connecticut. There was a shortage of officials for the Sunday League, the Connecticut State League, and they asked a couple of the college coaches, would you volunteer this particular Sunday, the opening of the season? And without taking an exam, without a fitness exam, without anything, the next day I was refereeing like Hartford Hellenic against New Britain Falcons. And that's how it all began.
Wow.
I was fortunate with my hockey background when indoor soccer started, because it was a combination of soccer, but played on really a hockey rink with the AstroTurf. Walter Chisowitz, who was a consultant for the league, asked me if I would be the referee in chief of the league, and so in that. I refereed the first MISL game, and about over 100 of them. And one of my biggest thrills, I think, in my career was having grown up in New York City, was refereeing not only the first game, which was in Nassau Coliseum, but also the All-Star game in Madison Square Garden.
So wow!
So that was really, really special for me. And since the indoors was kind of a really unique challenge for referees. So I was not only a referee in the league, but I ran the program. And we eventually had to hire full-time officials to concentrate on that game. It was probably the first full-time referee program maybe in the world, certainly in the United States. And so that experience, when Major League Soccer started, and in the first year they had so many challenges with officiating, and then I was asked to come work for Major League Soccer to help coordinate that program with United Soccer Federation and the Canadian Soccer Federation, and I did that for 15 years. And then as a result of that, I got the experience of doing some broadcasting, which I've been doing for the last 10 years on Fox.
Yeah, it's quite the progression. And we're definitely going to get a few guys. I think we might have Rich Grady come back on to talk about MASL, because it's a whole different beast, like you said. It's a interesting. And I know not everybody has one in their market around them, but I know here in Kansas City, I get out to a lot of Comets games, and it's a whole different world. That's for sure.
Yes, it is. And when indoor started, it was only one referee on the floor, and another referee in the box to supervise the penalty boxes, so to speak. And we did that way for the first 3 or 4 years in the league, and it was a major challenge. But it also helped create some fabulous referees, because you were so close to the players, and you got so good at determining advantage, which the advantage presented itself off the boards and rebounds and all, So, and we wanted a game that was a little bit rock'em sock'em but fast, and so. When referees went from indoors to outdoors, they said, "Oh, this is a piece of cake."
Oh yeah. Well, even just the management of players, in MASL, as it's referred to now, MASL. It creates a lot. We have a lot of the lower levels now, M2 and M3, that are starting up, and there's more teams picking up those, getting into the MASL atmosphere. And it creates a management, and it just, when you're inside and everything is kind of closed in on top of you, it helps a lot of our officials that transition to the outdoor game in several ways, like you said. That makes total sense.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Well, very cool. That's quite the progression. Everybody's got their own journey, and it's just fascinating to see how life takes its twists and turns. And now here you are. I know we were talking before we were recording. You've got some fun things coming up here very soon. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're 60 or 50 days away from the beginning of the World Cup in Qatar, and I'm happy to be included on that broadcast team for Fox. Myself and Mark Clattenburg will be the rules analyst. I'm happy there's 2 of us, because there's 4 games a day in the group stage. Back when I did Russia, there was 3 games a day. I did that by myself. Did all 64 games in front of a monitor and never got to see a game. I hope in Qatar that I might be able to get to see a game live, because everything is so close. That if I'm assigned, for example, the 2 morning games, then maybe I could catch the late evening game at another stadium, because everything is so close. But it's going to be an adventure. It's actually my 9th World Cup experience. I went my first World Cup as a spectator, 1982 in Spain. And then, of course, I participated in 2 World Cups as a coach in 1990 with our Italian 90 team. I was the assistant coach. And I also was the assistant coach for the 89 five-a-side team, which won a FIFA bronze medal in the first indoor World Cup, futsal style World Cup. And then, of course, 1994 was here in the USA, again, as a spectator. I was a spectator in France World Cup, in Germany World Cup, and of course worked, this would be my 3rd World Cup for Fox.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, I want to come back to a little bit just the progression that you've seen. That's a question I'm going to come up to here very shortly about, just as you've seen soccer progress and the officiating accordingly. But I want to get back to just a little bit of your story. as far as, you know, you've already talked about your progression and some of the stuff along the way, and you've already talked about some of those high points. Are there other high points or low points, things that you've kind of had to persevere through, or just the normal progression of life, I guess?
Well, I mentioned the game in Madison Square Garden as a high point.
Yeah.
I also did the 1988 Division I final, NCAA. So in that game, it was Indiana hosting Howard at Indiana. And in that game, I awarded a penalty kick in approximately the 31st minute. It was a controversial decision. And back then, even though the game was televised, it wasn't televised live. So in fact, had to wait a month to see how the announcers described it. What was controversial about it was that the player who was fouled was actually turning and coming away from the goal. There's clearly a foul there. And by today's standards, it would be an easy penalty kick call. And certainly if there was VAR, the VAR would have recommended a review, and the referee would have decided on a PK. But back then, PKs were in '88. PKs were a lot harder to come by, and there was no video review. So it's interesting. Seamus Mallon was the color commentator on the game. I'm still friendly with him today. So when live, he says, "Oh, that's a harsh call." And then when the replay comes on, he says, "Oh, well, he got him." So sometimes I do have the video clip of that. And sometimes when I do a clinic for referees, I show them because because it's an interesting thing and how it happened. It's so that was for a while, a month, I waited. You talk about a low point. I waited to see how the national TV audience and everybody else who was going to be watching the game was, what they thought of the decision.
Yeah. Did you and your friend Essay bond over this?
Well,
controversial penalty decisions that get vindicated later over video.
Yeah. Well, Essay, of course, has had a similar experience at a much bigger scale.
Yeah.
And he suffered only for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So when then the pictures came out and they clearly showed a shirt pull, and of course his was in the World Cup, so there was millions of people that were watching it, and I don't know how many people were watching the NCAA final back in 1988.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's interesting. It kind of comes full circle, now that you're talking about how the broadcasters describe that, and now you find yourself in that role. So I guess that leads us into that question about, as you've seen the progression of soccer over quite a period of time, are we trending in the right direction? I mean, I'm thinking more, we could talk broadly, but I'm thinking more on the officiating side of things. Are we doing things? Are we moving in the right direction? Have we improved? Are there areas you see us lacking behind? What's your thought on that?
Well, I think the first major consideration where we can judge of improvement is when it was decided that officials needed to make a decision whether they're going to concentrate on being a referee or an assistant referee. Back in the day, so to speak, referees did both. And of course, referees always wanted to be in the middle and concentrated on those skills. And when they were on the line, back then it wasn't even called assistant referee; it was called linesman. It was a lesser role, and the concentration to get it right was not as thorough, so to speak. And so today, I mean, it's a major improvement. The concentration that assistant referees have to do to get the offside flag, raised or kept down correctly, and that has added to better officiating all around, because they're not thinking, "Hey, I should be in the middle," because they're focusing on on helping the person in the middle by getting that offside decision correct, and then assisting wherever else is possible. And it's it's sometimes a more challenging role than being in the middle. The fitness to keeping up with the second last defender is very demanding. The concentration and the focus is very demanding, and I give credit to all those officials that have decided to be the best assistant referees they can be. And and people should not look down upon that decision at all, because it's an important part of the game. So I think number one, has added to better officiating all around. Number two, refereeing at the highest level is no longer a hobby. You know, when I got involved with MLS, and that's not that long ago, 25 or so years. Yeah. It was still a hobby. We met with the referees the beginning of the season in person, and then at All-Star break, only twice. There was no internet. We were making copies of VHS tapes and sending it to them.
Wow.
You know, and I mean, even assignments were made by fax. So
wow.
Yeah. But as things got better, we were able to communicate online. Everybody had a computer. You were able to look at your games right away on replay and whatever. So all of that became better, but really has become better at the highest level is the fitness, because they're now meeting. The referees are meeting not twice a year, but twice a month. Absent COVID. I mean, before COVID, and now
sure.
Back where we are. And at those meetings, their fitness is monitored. They're wearing all kinds of fitness monitoring gear, and the league or the organization professional referee organization, which now manages the referees at all the high levels in the United States. So that it monitors even when the referees are training at home. And they're, the good referees are getting 20, 30 games in the middle. They're getting paid a professional salary. They're full-time, and it's no longer a hobby. But the fitness level is unbelievable in terms of being in the right position to get the right angle, to get the call correct. And even with all of that, there's still opportunity for video assistant referee to help them. And that's the way it needs to be looked at. Video assistant referee is a help to the referees, because because of the angle you see the play, there might be a better angle. And often that angle is from behind the goal. Okay. And if you remember, do you remember when 5-6 years ago in UEFA, they had an assistant referee on the goal line? Yeah, remember that? So there was the additional assistant referee. That was part of the reason, because the best angle to see things in the penalty area is from behind the goal. So with video assistant referee, we get to see a different angle, and that has made for a lot less match critical incorrect decisions. Yeah. So you look at all those components, Gordy. The fitness level, the concentration of the assistant referees, VAR, the professionalism of the staff. It's all led to improvement of officiating worldwide. Yeah.
Well, and even, I know you're still involved in the collegiate game. And, I think even at that level, we deal with that in Kansas City here with our college chapter. We have about 70 some officials that work, and just the availability of video, right? After games, we're able to go back and watch our games over again. We're able to use tools like Zoom and other webinar things. We're able to meet with some regularity and actually, talk through some things and go, hey, this is where we'd like to do things differently. Points of emphasis are able to be disseminated. There was a webinar last night from the NCAA where they're able to talk through points of emphasis and connect with officials across the country. I think it's not probably, would it be fair to say it's not just the professional game, but all aspects of the game continue to advance and leverage technology and other aspects.
Absolutely, 100%. And especially points of emphasis. I mean, I looked at, there's a website, Soccer America, I'm sure you're familiar with it, which has soccer on TV. There was 122 college games listed for today.
Wow.
So which you could watch on ACC has their own network. ESPN Plus carries the game. So, and that's men's games, women's games. So,
right.
Yeah.
All levels get to watch the game and get better, watch your peers working. We certainly encourage that at the grassroots level. Come early before your game and watch somebody else work and learn from them,
Fabulous. I mean, that's I know one of the questions that someone from the audience that you sent me beforehand is how do you improve yourself? Well, there's the fact that there are so many games on television. Okay, as a young referee, you need to be watching those games. Okay, and sometimes mistakes are made, but they are corrected with VAR or otherwise. And as a referee, you should be saying to yourself, okay, there's a mistake. Okay, or that's a mistake that I'm not going to make.
Yeah.
Or there's a good call. I really like that call. If I see there's something the same or similar, I now know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
So in addition to going to games early, like we mentioned, a number of games on TV that are available to watch the top level officials, it's amazing to be used as a tool to better your own self as a referee.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a fair statement. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, there's obviously differences between the game at various levels, but there's quite a bit of similarities. And so I think that when you're able to look the speed, the physicality, all that stuff at the professional level, camera angles, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know, would you agree that there's probably quite a bit of similarity? So the referees are watching these games, they're able to go, hey, I can actually pull things from this and emulate the professionalism or other aspects to what the referee's doing. Would that be fair to say there's probably not as big of a difference as we think there is?
The game is the same. It's the same play, all over the world. The rules are the same, first of all. The game is the same. Yes, it's played differently at different levels because the skill level is different. The physicality is different. So you have to be prepared for all of that. But even watching referees, body language, facial expressions, you get these close. You have to be yourself out there, but there's a lot of acting that goes on, as a referee. Sometimes you have to act. You have to act like this play really upsets you. I mean, and so you come, and you talk to a player, or you give them one of these, and you show a facial expression that's really meaningful. And that's why sometimes we say to referees, get in front of a mirror and sit. And see what you look like when you're making a call. And right. So of course, there's so many things to learn.
Yeah. Well, that goes into a question that we received from Joe, a different Joe. This wasn't you in an alter ego or something under the same name. This was
you don't know that.
That's true. That's true. Excuse me. So this question was, why has there been a movement in his experience, or at least in what he's saying, why has there been a movement to take the referee's personality out of the style of refereeing and movement to a more robotic refereeing? That's the way the question's been phrased.
Yeah, that's, I don't know what Joe's experience is, and I've seen in all sports officiating move towards a more robotic type. I mean, back in the early days of NBA, and I'm talking when they were playing double headers and referees were characters and they had personality. There was Sid Borgia and Mendy Rudolph, and the same thing with hockey. But when they added an additional referee, when they went from 2 to 3, when hockey went from 1 to 2, when assistant referees became assistant referees, not linesmen only, and teamwork and teamwork was an important part of soccer officiating. There's always that word consistency. So we talk, consistency has many meanings, but so we want a referee to be consistent within that game, but players and coaches have the right to expect that they're going to have a referee on Thursday, and why should the referee on Sunday be so much different?
Yeah.
Right. So that consistency from game to game, not only with the same referee, but different referees. And you got to remember, referees come from all kinds of backgrounds. There are referees who have played. There are referees who have coached. There are referees who haven't played. There are referees who haven't coached. There are referees that come from the Southern Hemisphere where the game is played differently, where it's more technical. The referees who come from the British Isles where the game is played more differently, maybe more physical. So you have all this melting pot of and it's a little bit unfair to have all of those differences because the players and coaches don't know what to expect. So that's why there's a move to bring to take a little bit of the personality out and make it more consistent. But at the end of the day, Gordon, personality is still important in match control and player in player management. You know, I mean, back in the days of indoor, we had a referee, Gino DiPolito. He had such a personality, and he's so remembered by the players that whenever I see a player who played in the indoor league, they don't ask me how I'm doing. They ask me, how's Gina?
Wow.
Because that's, they remember him from his personality. So you can't take personality away, but you have to use it when needed, but you also have to have consistency because that's what's expected by the players and the coaches and the fans.
Yeah. I think if there's folks listening to this that aren't referees, hopefully they're understanding the challenge that faces match officials in what you're describing, trying to balance all of this, right? And I think the statement that we had an official that I worked with last night in a collegiate game that was talking about one of the coaches on the club side, and he went up to him before a game. He goes, my favorite memory of this coach was he came up to me before a game at State Cup a couple of years ago, and he shook his hand. He said, "Good luck today. Be invisible." That's what he told the referee. So there's this, right? I think there's this feeling overall. It's like, no, the best referees are the ones that go completely unnoticed and they walk off the game and the players decide all that kind of stuff. And, I think we probably both agree that there's at least some truth in that, but maybe that's part of the push, right? Like if you have personality, I don't know.
Well, I've heard that, of course, the best referee is the one that you haven't seen. How do you referee a game where there could be only one goal in the game, and that could be a penalty kick, or there could be a penalty kick situation which you don't give? So it's impossible, almost impossible, to referee a soccer game and be invisible because at the end of the day, there's going to be a match critical decision somewhere in a game. Otherwise, it's a vanilla game. The only way you can be invisible if the whole game is vanilla. There's no match critical decision. There's no penalty or no penalty. There's no goal line decision. There's no, was it a red or was it a yellow or was it a second yellow decision? And, was it offside or was it not offside? So those are the four match critical decisions. I mean, and so when you have to make one of them in a game, you're no longer invisible because it can decide the outcome of the game. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, there are many sports where the referee, has to make multiple decisions in a game. But I think soccer is the only sport where one decision determines the outcome.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to clip that and record it and give it to some of these coaches when they come out and tell us that we have to be invisible. Hey, Dr. Joe said, no, you're exactly right, though. You're exactly right. There's moments where you have to step up and make the decision, and it's not possible to just blend into the background. Absolutely. So we had a couple more questions from Joe. So this one was interesting. Do you think the MLS should promote better sideline behavior from fans specifically towards referees?
Yeah, I was happy you sent that to me in advance because it gave me some time to think about it.
Yeah.
Fan experience in all sport. It's part of it is not only rooting for your team, but especially in situations where the referee has to make a decision. You're going to come down. You're going to show your displeasure on a particular call. Whatever. I mean, you could boo. You could you could wave. You'll see it again on replay. There was a movement in FIFA where they would not show replays on the giant screen, on the so-called jumbotron. But now everybody has an iPhone and they're watching the game. So everybody knows right now, whether the decision of the referee is correct or incorrect. And they have a right to express their displeasure. They don't have a right to throw things. They don't have a right to use foul and abusive language against the referee. They don't have they don't have those rights any more than they do against a player. But it's very difficult to control, and it's part of the fan experience. And like we said before, at the end of the day, not everybody's going to agree with every decision. One team, the decision is favorable to one team and against the other, and the fans of the other have a right to express their displeasure, but only in acceptable ways.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense to me. It is difficult to police. So when I thought about that question, I was like, oh my word, how do you go about addressing those kinds of issues? It would be a tall order. Let's put it that way.
Well, NCAA, for example, as you know, because you do college as well as you said, I'm still involved, and I am as an assigner. NCAA reads, the announcer is supposed to read before the game the NCAA fan behavior code, right? And so that's a step. You're familiar with the situation in Mexico with the Mexico national team, where fan behavior towards the opposing goalkeeper when he or she takes a goal kick crosses the line, and FIFA has and CONCACAF penalized them. They played 3 World Cup qualifiers in Azteca without any fans.
Yeah,
as punishment, and that hurts. That hurts financially as well as the motivational aspect for the team to play better.
Right.
And they've given the referee the power when fan behavior of that sort happens. The referee can stop the game and bring both teams to the center circle, right? And they announce the rules over the loudspeaker system. They could now go back and play. And if it happens again, the same thing can happen, or by the referee, or he or she can take the teams off the field. We might see this. We might see this at the World Cup this year. You just never know.
Well, especially to address some of the more vulgar, like what you're describing, or things that are, homophobic or racist or anything like that have no part of soccer.
Exactly.
Like you said, the displeasure, the passion, we certainly don't want to keep that from the game, the passion of the game and fans being avid supporters. But you're right, that extra layer of what's inappropriate, it doesn't have a place. And it is good to see these leagues and groups take some steps to address that. There's no doubt.
You talk about passion. So one of the considerations of VAR is that fans now don't know whether they should cheer a goal, because if there's a close offside, there's a close offside decision. They don't know which way it's going. I mean, to the naked eye, you can't tell, right? Live, right? Depending on where you're sitting and the angle, and to to the point, and I'm sure your listeners know this, but FIFA will be using at the World Cup a new technology called semi-automatic offside, where there will be multiple cameras around the stadium that will focus on every player's body that can score a goal, and taking a picture 50 images a second, so that they will instantly know at the moment the ball is kicked or headed whether the player is in an offside position. So this is going to speed up and make 100% accurate the decision on offside position. Okay. Now the referee still has to decide: did the player interfere with play? Did the player interfere with an opponent? Did the player gain an advantage? All of these things that come into the offside final decision. But at least they will now know whether the player was in an offside position or not.
So is that going to lead to, I know the criticism of some, the ways that VAR has been utilized in other parts of the world is that it feels like we're kind of splitting hairs and going like, oh, his toenail was offside or something like that. Is this going to be a positive move for the game globally?
Well, that's the question. So,
sure.
There are some that think that we're calling offside too closely. That benefit of the doubt should go to attacking soccer. Some, FIFA 10, 12 years ago, maybe longer, said, even used to be offside. Now even is onside. Okay. And so in MLS, for example, where they don't have as many cameras, they're not drawing the offside line with VAR, and they're giving benefit of the doubt to attacking soccer, causing some controversy. But in this World Cup, there will probably be less goals, even because offside is going to be called so tightly and so accurately. And the offside rule is one of those black and white. That part of it is a black and white decision. Was the player in the offside position or not? The rest is subjective. Whether an advantage is gained, whether he interferes with an opponent, or makes a play on the ball.
Right. It will be interesting to see, and it sounds like you may have your hands full from your perspective as an analyst there. So yeah, I'm sure you're going to add some more cheat sheets to be ready for that conversation.
Yeah. I'll be bringing mine with me and making them more clearer, easier to read. So maybe Mark Clattenburg will use them as well.
There you go. So one final question, as Joe asks, is it, and I'll just read the question as it's written, is it better to referee with arrogance or with a more subdued, friendly / straightforward demeanor?
That's a difficult one because it's situational.
Sure.
It's situational. Every referee has baggage, so to speak, positive baggage and negative baggage. That's the baggage being the experience that he or she has had with the team or teams that they're going into a game to officiate. So you would like to think that you're walking on the field and you're welcome. You're welcome because the teams, they either know you or seen you officiate, whatever. And you can certainly start the game without being an arrogant person. But there may come a time where in that game where you have to apply the law when no one is going to like it. Yeah. And that may be perceived as arrogant because it's just the nature of the game. So so the question is difficult. You don't have to be arrogant. You can, but there may come a time in the game where you just have to lay down the law, and that will be perceived as arrogance.
Great answer. Yeah, absolutely. So you alluded to this question earlier. We'll kind of add, this will be our, we got maybe just wrap it up here with a couple of things, but The question was, what's your best advice for young referees trying to climb the ladder? You talked about being able to watch games. Were there other things that came to mind for you?
Well, you know, if you're a player, and you've decided to do some refereeing, continue playing. Play at the highest level you can get to, because it's going to help you as a referee, because you're gonna know when something happens on the field, because you've experienced as a player. You're going to understand the pain. You're going to understand the emotion. If you've done some coaching, we mentioned Essie Bahamas. Essie Bahamas has a B coaching license that he got. He decided, that it was going to help him as a referee. And if you're coaching, you're going to understand team tactics. You're going to understand strategy. You're going to understand set plays. You're going to figure out in a short period of time how the other team is organizing their attack. Is there a significant player that the player is going to go through? And you're going to have to then position yourself accordingly. Referees today do scouting. It's a good idea if you're going into a game, to know how the teams play. To look at a game on TV or on the computer or whatever. And so all of these things, the playing and the coaching, and obviously refereeing as many as you can, but these playing and the coaching gives you what they call, hopefully, a feel for the game. So you walk on the field, and you're comfortable, because you've been there before, and you're going to look comfortable. You've been there as a player, you've been on the sidelines as a coach, and you're going to get it done. Last but not least, as an assigner, I'm not a fan of referees soliciting games. As an assigner, it's my job to put the best referee in a situation as I see it. So that always kind of offended me, because I'm going to look for the very best referees to work in my conference, and I would recommend that if you're a good referee, people are going to find you as a good referee. You're going to advance, because there's a shortage of referees, and there's even a greater shortage of good referees, or great referees. So if you're good, because you played, because you coached, because you do a lot of games, because you watch games on TV, all of these things, you put it all together. If you're good, you're going to advance.
Yeah, that makes sense. Excellent. Well, that gives some tangible steps for referees to take. And I know that's an encouraging word. We have some local referees that wonder, should I go? I have opportunities to play in college. Should I go do that? And I've told them many times, and now I feel better about my answer. Go play. You go play. So
absolutely,
very good. Well, I'll ask you one last question, then we'll wrap up. But this one, just something that came off the top of my head, and I sent this to you in advance. But how does top-level soccer, both at the domestic and then international level, trickle down to grassroots, especially as it affects referees? And let me give you the motivation behind that question. One of the things that I think that I see is, and I know the MLS took some steps to kind of address this, just as one example, is like the swarming of the referee. As we start to see players that watch in any sport, and I do basketball as well, in any sport, as they watch professional players go about their business, inevitably that's going to infiltrate and kind of trickle down. Do you see this in any particular way in our country, especially with soccer?
Yeah, I mean, dissent is something that's difficult to control. Because there's a difference between an emotional response and dissent. Yeah. So soccer is a very emotional game, and part of the problem is, so say basketball, which you just referenced. So you get dissent, and you're going to call a technical foul,
right?
And that might add up to 2 points, or I'm not that
savvy,
right? Yeah, right. So or one, and loss of possession of the ball. But there's 90%, 90 points in the game. So now you've given a yellow card for dissent. So now, and fair enough, because we're trying to get rid of dissent. But now you possibly affecting how the game is played, because there might be opportunity for a second yellow card for that player. And now you've reduced the team to 10, which now changes the game. There's no sport that I know of where you play shorthanded when you've been sanctioned. So right,
yep,
right.
I
mean, even a 10-minute misconduct in hockey is they play at full strength. In fact, FIFA at the younger levels are experimenting with the so-called sin bin, where you can maybe you put a player in the sin bin for 10 minutes, and that's a way conceivably without affecting the outcome of the game. It's a difficult challenge. I think it's always been a challenge in MLS. I think Pro has done a good job, and you can see, before every game that I do, the MLS game, I do a little referee research, and you can see that last year this referee averaged 3.7 yellows a game. He's now averaging 5.6. Okay, so because of the initiatives that they have, one of which is dissent, the other which is stopping a promising attack, time wasting. So the dissent and the mobbing of the referee. The only way, there's only two ways to control it, either by the referee or by the league. So the referee has tools to control it, but it's difficult for the referee because it could seriously, because he cannot be invisible. Because he cannot be invisible when he's controlling it. And the league can control it by fining and suspending players post-game. Okay? It's done in the Premiership, where this is done with fines to the club when the players mob a referee. So that's another way that it can be done. But if the club pays the fines and the players don't pay the fines, I'm not so sure that works.
That brings, absolutely. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed our conversation, Dr. Joe, and I do want to give you kind of the last word. If there's anything that you want to share with the Check Complete podcast audience as we finish our conversation.
Well, it's been fun for me too, and it helps me bring everything together, and I hope that I was going through my paperwork just prior to, and I found my 1993 registration card.
Oh, look at that!
Yeah, I was once a national referee in Connecticut. Grade 14 was national. So it's just a fun. Come on, if you played a little bit, you coach a little bit, then you should have an opportunity to referee, because it's just a fun way to stay involved, and you're really making a contribution back, to the game, because the game requires officiating at that's at the same level that the game is being played.
Very good. Well, I really appreciate it again. You helped us get better today, and you answered some fun questions. We really appreciate it. And we'll be listening and looking forward to hearing you from Qatar in the World Cup. That'll be very exciting. Hope that's a wonderful and safe trip for you. So once again, Dr. Joe, thank you so much.
No, thank you. Really appreciate it.